First, pretty obviously, there's going to have to be a big national reset once this corona crisis is over. This week, the normally circumspect Governor of the Reserve Bank called for a new era of economic reform. And in his press conference today, the Prime Minister might have stressed the need for an unlikely business and union consensus to get the reforms done, whatever those reforms might be, we still don't know. But Scott Morrison at least knows that coming out of this once-in-a-generation crisis, it cannot be politics as usual. That's because for as long as Australia can't manage water better by building more dams, can't make more of our abundant coal, gas and uranium to get cheap baseload power back into our system, and can't use the purchasing power of government to give our own manufacturers a fair go, without all of that, we are not a serious country. If there's some good to come out of this corona-caused economic slump, it should be a new realism about what matters and a new focus on making the most of our country's potential. Key, of course, in all of this is a rethink about our economic reliance on China. I'm not talking here about the $100 billion worth every year of iron ore, coal and gas that we ship to China. These are fungible commodities that China buys from us because we're reliable and a low-cost supplier, and what we could sell to others, of course, if China ever sought to buy them elsewhere. What I'm talking about instead is our over-reliance on China for so many of our daily necessities, items that we take for granted till there's a crisis and we can't import them anymore. Surgical masks and the other protective equipment that we need in a crisis that was sent offshore, we've outsourced to China, all to save a few dollars. Medicines and a lot of pharmaceutical products as well. Now, make no mistake, as a communist dictatorship that spies on its own citizens, bullies its neighbours, locks up its minorities and militarises its adjoining seas, China will never, ever do us any favours. It will make use of us where it serves the Chinese self-interest, but there will never be any meeting of minds or shared values while the Communist Party remains in charge. And that's why we have to be so ultra cautious about this so-called Belt and Road Initiative that China is dangling before countries worldwide, or in the case of Victorians, their Premier, Dan Andrews, who recently signed up to this deal, but of course it's still very much a secret. Last night on the show, we again talked about the Belt and Road Initiative, and I received a number of emails from viewers who said, Peter, you use the term a bit. I'm keen to know what it means. I'm not exactly sure what the concern is. So here we go. Well, at one level, there is a $600 billion pot of potential investment that China is offering to other countries. That's what Belt and Road means. There's a number of banners underneath it. Of course, under one component, they call this the New Silk Road. There's supposed to be a China-funded and China-built railway line stretching from Beijing all the way to Madrid. Under another so-called component, they call it the maritime belt, there's supposed to be a string of China-funded and China-built ports stretching all the way to Africa and into the Mediterranean. At one level, it's about facilitating trade and commerce. What could be more innocent than that? But at a deeper level, though, it's about making other countries economically dependent on China. It's a form of economic colonialisation. The Chinese government know they can't beat us. So why argue instead? I would argue they're trying to buy us. Take the soft loans that were offered to Sri Lanka to build a new port in Colombo that the government has not been able to repay. So, of course, the port is now Chinese-owned and a regular port of call, almost a base for ships of the People's Liberation Navy, which again calls into question why on earth the Andrews Labor government in Victoria would sign up to a loans relationship with China that the federal government warned would not be in Australia's national interest. I know the sort of intelligence and security briefings that federal government gets, so I can't for the life of me understand why the Andrews government thinks they know better. I am a supporter of foreign investment. Australia given our geography and population, couldn't build big projects without foreign investment. But every project needs to be assessed on its individual merits. And while foreign investment is often necessary, I'm dead against foreign ownership, because all too often that ends up being foreign control, particularly in the case of China. How do you think an Australian company would go trying to build China's IT networks? It wouldn't get a look in, would it? Or to buy a Chinese port, as they did here under Malcolm Turnbull when the Port of Darwin changed hands. When Boris Johnson returns to work from his coronavirus recuperation, one of the first things he should do is cancel Huawei's participation in the British 5G network, as we have not allowed here in Australia. And while for the duration of the pandemic, the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, has already moved to subject all foreign investment proposals to scrutiny, not just those over a certain dollar limit, he's starting at every single project. This change, Josh Frydenberg, should last a hell of a lot longer than just 6 months. It should be permanent, and I'd go further. There ought to be a fair income reform of the whole foreign investment process and a smarter, more strategic assessment of what assets we are prepared to allow investment in the first place, and certainly not water and energy, I'd argue, as we do now.